You have a history of President Trump. I'd say you've helped him on at least 2 occasions when he's close to bankruptcy. You still own that yacht of his?
Yes, we did buy the Trump Princess boat, and now it's called Kingdom boat. Yes.
You haven't met President Biden, but you've met Obama, Bush, and Trump.
But I'm very close to Bush 1 and Bush 2.
Bush 2. Okay.
Closer than the Obama, especially Bush the father. Very good.
Another friend of yours is Rupert Murdoch. And
Rupert Murdoch, I know him since 30 years. I mean, we were allies with him in News Corp, and then News Corp on Fox, obviously. But obviously, we divested before he sold it to Disney.
Moving to XAI, it's your only direct investment in AI.
XAI with Musk. We bet on him, frankly speaking.
Your Highness, it's genuinely an absolute pleasure to meet you and to have spoken to you earlier as well. I was just telling my team about how everyone here speaks positively about you and how they love working for you. I'm like, okay, everyone says that about every CEO, but your energy is contagious, and your achievements are too many to list. My first question to you, sir, is how? When you wake up every morning, how do you get that energy to do what you do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, happy to be with you. I follow you, and I think you're doing an incredible job also in the new media arena. Through X, that we all love and we are heavily invested in. Now, clearly, you have to like what you do, to be energetic when you wake up in the morning, and invest in all these areas that you enjoy. So you have to have the will, you have to have the guts, you have to have the ability, and you have to have the objectives, and you have to have the mission statement to perform.
But what would be your objective? Because you've achieved incredible wealth, one of the richest men on the planet. You've met every world leader one could think of. Is there a certain objective you're trying to achieve, something you're striving for?
Well, our group consists of many groups, many areas. We have Kingdom Holding that covers the investment part. We have the Alwaleed Philanthropies that covers the philanthropy and charity part of what I do. And we have my private office that invests in areas that Kingdom Holding may not invest in. And obviously we have the media arm, Rotana, that is heavily involved in all kinds of media in the Arab world and entertainment. Such as you have the exclusivity for almost 80% of all the singers in the Arab world. We have concerts. We also have around 50% of all the legacy Arab movie library. And now we are heavily invested also in making new movies. So we are heavily invested in old media. Yet also we are invested in new media, which we'll talk about. And obviously we have the sports arm, which is Al Hilal, which is also very dominant in the Arab world, and now in Asia and even international arena. It is the only team from Saudi Arabia that is being represented in the World Cup that's going to take place next year in the United States. So it's a huge diversified portfolio, and they are all synchronized together, and we are all on that floor that you just saw today.
So one thing I found extremely fascinating about you, and I haven't seen anyone ask you about this in all your interviews, Her Royal Highness Princess Lamia said that you're in everything. You're also a very big risk taker, which we'll talk about. You're in everything. And when I spoke to my business partner, he said what I love about Prince Alwaleed is that he's always in the middle. When it comes to politics, when it comes to business, when it comes to any societal issue, he doesn't take sides. He talks to both sides at all times. And we've seen that. We were talking behind the scenes. We talked about Brazil. You met President Bolsonaro. You met President Lula. You've met almost every president since George Bush Sr. in the US, except President Biden for some reason. What is your philosophy when it comes to politics, when it comes to business, being a person that genuinely meets all sides?
Well, look, at the end of the day, politics is really intertwined somehow with business. You see right now what's happening in the United States between Trump and Mr. Musk. You see the marriage that happened there between business and politics. Even our region, there's no doubt that you have to have the political arm, you have to have the political reach, You have to have the political connections to really to advance your causes. Clearly, your positive and good causes. For example, in Saudi Arabia, we have many projects with the Saudi government, whether it's in the business community, whether it's in the philanthropy, whether in the charity, whether it's in the sports, whether it's the entertainment, whether it's in the media. So a lot of our projects are with the government. And clearly, our belief is that you have to be centrist, you have to be positive with everybody, and you don't take sides, of course. But at the end of the day, you need to have a direction. For example, we believe in the Saudi system. We believe in what the Crown Prince is doing. That's why I support him all the way. So at the end of the day, you have to have beliefs, you have to have convictions, and follow them at the end of the day.
But for someone that does talk to all sides when it comes to the political arena and the business arena, Bill Gates, Elon, for example, and Murdoch, why is the world so polarized? Like we saw that in the US where the president literally got shot. How is the world so polarized? How do we have war in Ukraine? How do we have war in the Middle East after all these years?
Unfortunately, we have seen the United States is extremely polarized. And the last election that ex-president and now president-elect Trump has won decisively. Clearly, the United States is polarized, and the whole world is polarized. And clearly, but there are pockets of resistance to the international global system. But yet, I'm optimistic, frankly speaking. You have polarization, yes, in the United States and in the world, but the world is moving in a positive direction. Look at with all the polarization happening in America now in the political system. Look at the economical situation in America. Unemployment is down to, although it ticked a little bit lately, it's 4.2. Inflation is just below 2.5. American growth is well. Private sector is booming. Stock market is doing great, even under Biden, let alone what's going to happen under Trump. So, yes, there is polarization and there is a lot of potential conflicts. But in general and total, the world is positive, really. And look at what Mr. Musk is doing now. Look at all the indices involved in. They are all create positivity and put a good aura in this whole good injection of positivity in this whole international world community.
But one would say the US debt is ballooning and that hasn't slowed. We've got war, almost direct war between the US and Russia. We've got the Middle East is in shambles. We don't know what's going to happen in Taiwan. So I know there's always going to be something.
Yes.
And you've been through decades of this. So there's always something historically, and we are generally heading in a better direction. But it is still a concerning direction from what we're seeing. And what I'm genuinely curious about is I'm from the outside. I get the pleasure of interviewing some people, some world leaders, some decision makers. But you've met just so many of them. Why do you think they are so polarized? Why do you think why do you think President Biden and President Putin and Zelensky couldn't just sit down and find a solution rather than end up in where we're being today? What happens behind the scenes that leads to these wars, that leads to that polarization?
Yeah. Look, United States, if you look at history, you had many empires. Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, Persian Empire, the Islamic Empire. After that you had the British, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the French Empire. And now we have an American Empire. Now, clearly America does not go and colonize in many countries like all those countries used to colonize, like, for example, Britain, the British Empire, or French Empire, Spanish Empire, or Portuguese Empire. You have an American Empire. And that empire now is diminishing because of the internal problems we have in the United States, or issues, but also new powers are coming up. China is a power coming up. India is coming up, maybe not as strong as China, but it's coming up. Europe is a potential big power, yet has a lot of issues internally, but these are big powers coming. So really, you are seeing a transition right now from being one country dominating the whole world, United States, into new powers are coming up, and these powers would like to have a say. We see a lot of now discussions right now about why you only have 5 security members in the United States, in the UN, United States, Russia, China, England, and France. Why not, for example, include the European Union? Why don't you include, for example, India? Why not to have, for example, other voices from Latin America, like Brazil? So we are moving right now from one country dominating the whole political area in the world into having new forces. Now, clearly, the aggression of Russia into Ukraine, that's a pretty unique situation, because Putin's personal ambitions into expanding the Russian hegemony, he in public by saying it was a very sad day when the Soviet Union collapsed. So I mean, he still has this grandeur image of Russia. Yet, with all that the things happening, we see there's still a dialogue and discussion between the United States and America. We see Mr. Biden meeting Xi Jinping frequently. They're in discussion. We see now President Trump coming into power on January 20th and saying that I'd like to dictate or at least influence a potential peaceful discussion between Russia and Ukraine. So you need strong leadership, frankly speaking, to do that. And Trump is a strong leader, really. So look, Ukraine, without the U.S. arms supply and the German, Italian, French, and British, they could not survive what's happening. Now, clearly, we still like to have a just peace over there, but with all these powers trying to take a chunk from American hegemony in this whole world, America will still be great for next 20, 30, 40 years. But they have to acknowledge the fact that new powers are coming up, like China, India, and potentially West Europe.
So essentially what we're seeing right now is that the repercussions of a geopolitical shift, or I wouldn't say the end of an empire, but the rise of other empires.
Correct.
And you talked about Putin's ambitions. How big of a role do you think the NATO's expansion played in the war that we're seeing in Ukraine? Because you've got NATO across the border in Russia, and you have the same thing in China.
Well, look, clearly, I mean, Russia cannot stand the fact to have NATO come to its borders. Yet, having attacked Ukraine, now they have two countries, on their borders, Sweden and Finland. They were already gotten into NATO, so it backfired on them from that point of view. But Ukraine is a unique situation. If you look historically at the Crimean, during the Soviet Union era, it was part of Russia, and Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. If you look historically, the Crimean part of Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, but was part of the Russian Republic at that time. Yet they moved it into Ukraine. It was one country, so it was easy to juggle things back and forth. So when Putin took over, obviously, and then he took this, a few years ago, he took Crimean. And now, and not much happened, obviously, from the West. Clearly, they put sanctions on them, but it was not really. It was just symbolic. A slap on the hand. It was not really aggressive. Clearly, gave him the courage to go and attack East Ukraine with the objective to have all Ukraine be under his hegemony, which didn't happen, obviously.
And then moving to. So I've got so many questions about President Trump, who you have history with, about Elon, about your investments in XXL. It's just so many topics considering your achievements. But I want to go back, talking about geopolitics, I want to go back to the Middle East. You were very vocal about the Palestinian cause, and it's heartbreaking to see where we are today. What was your initial reaction when you saw what happened on October 7th?
Well, look, October 7th is a horrendous act. I mean, what happened really is just is not right. It's not correct. It's not right at all. Nothing justifies the killing of innocent people on the Israeli side, but also nothing justifies the killing of Palestinian people on the Palestinian side also. I mean, war creates war, another war. Massacring the Israelis on the October 7th is not right at all. But also there has to be a peaceful solution and resolution for the Palestinian cause that's been going on since the division of Palestine and Israel in 1947. We had many wars, 1949, 1973, the 1980s, until when all these things are going to have to continue. There's no doubt that you need to have a peaceful resolution to the Palestinian cause, a two-state solution, maybe with one unified capital, or dividing East Jerusalem and West to East. All this has to be kept for negotiations between both parties. And that's the official position of Saudi Arabia, to have a peaceful solution for the Palestinian cause. So we stop triggering any other potential terrorist acts like the one that happened on October.
But do you think? I've spoken to a lot of people about this. Many are saying that a two-state solution is essentially dead. It's not possible anymore after October 7th.
Well, I don't believe so, because Resolution 242 of United Nations it really talks about all these issues. So I don't believe it's dead, frankly speaking. Maybe under Netanyahu, under Netanyahu and the current regime in Israel, maybe it's not ready to fly or take off. But that's the only solution for the Palestinian dilemma that's been going on for for so many years.
Seeing, October 7th led to impacted the entire region, not just Palestine, what we're seeing in Lebanon, what we saw now in Syria as well. We saw Iran weaker than it's ever been. We talked about this earlier. I want to get your general thoughts on where Iran stands today. You've been very critical of Iran. Iran should never have nuclear weapons. You were not happy with America's stance under Obama. They weren't strict enough. They weren't harsh enough towards Iran. Obviously, Trump is a lot more hawkish. So what are your general thoughts on the new Iran and the new power landscape in the Middle East?
Yeah. Look, the October attack from Hamas to Israel triggered many events. We saw how Hezbollah got an alliance with that act, and they attacked Israel. I think this came from the idea of having a raison d'être. They had to do that.
A reason to be.
Exactly, reason to be. And we've seen how they've been decimated now by the Israeli forces without much losses on the Israeli forces. So Nasrallah is gone. 70-80% of their military power is being eradicated.
Their leadership has gone as well.
Yes. We've seen how Iran is being wounded also, being attacked by Israel inside the Iranian borders. And we see what happened to the Syrian regime. All these factors really were huge, will have huge impact on our region. And as a result of that, this may create, ironically speaking, this may create even more stability in our region. Clearly our region without Hezbollah, and I call them terrorist Hezbollah, is a lot better than having Hezbollah being strong and the hegemony in Lebanon. So the collapse of the Syrian regime, the destruction of big part of the Hezbollah military infrastructure in Lebanon, and the weakening, dramatic weakening, a substantial weakening of Iran, all these are positive factors for our region, frankly speaking. And we have to look at it long term. And you see right now how parliament leader in Lebanon, Nabih Berri, called for an election of a president on the 9th of January in Lebanon, which is, after 2 years of not having president there. So all these events hopefully will create more stability in our area and region.
That's interesting. Can you expand on that? So a lot of people don't see that. They just don't see what's happening right now in the Middle East to be the precipice for more stability. But in some ways, I think the Middle East has got a fork in the road for some countries, where Lebanon now, without Hezbollah, without military power of Hezbollah, has the ability to get closer to the West, which allows it to be more prosperous. If you look at all countries in the Middle East, the ones that are aligned with the West are more prosperous, whether you like or dislike the West. But the alternative is more instability, similar to what we're seeing in Syria. Now you've got different rebel groups. We talked about it earlier. You've got a Kurdish group. You've got the Turkish-backed group fighting together in Syria. I know you're an optimist, but if I had to ask you to give a likelihood of both possibilities.
Yeah. Great question. I'm optimist, but I'm realist. Let me elaborate on the situation in the Middle East here. We have 22 Arab countries. I like to separate the Arab world into two parts. And this is going to be fascinating for you. Look at the 6 monarchies in the Arab world. GCC members: Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, Oman, Bahrain, Qatar. All kingdoms. And look at the Kingdom of Jordan. Clearly, they don't have much resources, yet very stable, in a very nasty neighborhood around them. Look at Morocco. So 8 kingdoms, relatively speaking, are doing great, regardless of having oil oil and gas or not. They are stable and doing, relatively speaking, great. But look at all the Arab or other republic countries in Arab world: Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Yemen, Somalia, Djibouti, Tunis, Libya. All either they have civil wars, or they've been devastated, or demolished, or in bad shape. The only exception is Egypt. And Egypt is doing relatively well because the huge support coming from the 6 monarchies in the region. And guess what? Among those countries who are really doing bad, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and even Sudan, what's common ground among all of them? It's Iran. It's the interference of Iran in all those countries.
Why? Why is Iran doing that?
Look, the doctrine of Iran, the raison d'etre is revolutionary. It's living on instability. And that's what created all over the place. Look at Yemen, what's happening in Yemen. Yemen was doing great. Look what's happening to right now. It's almost a complete collapse. Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine. Even Sudan, they're interfering. So whenever clearly, I'm not saying that all those countries are in deep trouble just because of Iran, but Iran played a huge role. These countries being destabilized and not doing great.
The optimistic view is that Iran weakening would allow those countries to move away from Iran's grip. But what would be the alternative? So how would that work? Would they have to be? What would Iran have to do now that they're weakened? Because when you have someone in the corner, there's two outcomes. They become your friend. They have to normalize relations, but they have to save face because their raison d'etre is revolution. So if their raison d'etre is revolution, then they cannot normalize relations with the West. So they keep fighting, but then what, a direct war?
Look, we are now in transition in the United States. Biden's going to leave. Trump is going to take over January 20th. So I think we have to give this time to play. Clearly, the Biden administration was really, I would say, somehow accommodating for the Iranian regime. I mean, look, with all the sanctions, Iran was still producing 3.5 to 4 million barrels a day and exporting the bulk of it. So all that with the sanctions. So really, the Biden administration was not really imposing the so-called sanctions heavily on Iran. Clearly now we're going to have a new administration, and we have to see what Mr. Trump is going to do and how he's going to act and react to what's happening in Iran. Clearly, Iran can only understand force. And look happened between when Israel attacked them aggressively a few times. They shook them, and as a result of that, their support to the Syrian regime diminished substantially, which triggered and caused the collapse of the Syrian regime. That was one of the main reasons there. I mean, you had a lot of Iranian personnel, a lot of Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and their Hezbollah surrogates being in Syria. Clearly, so when you hit them hard, these people really listen and back off.
So are you implying that force will be the only way to get Iran to change?
I think force is one of the ways, for sure. But you cannot be with them lenient, for sure. You have to be tough and aggressive with them for them to listen. And look what happened. Syria is a great example. Great example. Look, they just gave up completely on that. On their major ally in the Arab world was Syria. Clearly, relation with Iraq is still strong, but it's not as strong with the ex-Syrian regime.
Assad regime, yes. But what about China and Russia's role in this? Because obviously they have an incentive to distract, or at least Russia has an incentive to distract the US from Ukraine, and China has an incentive to weaken the US.
Look, China, let's neutralize China on this Syrian issue. We have seen also Russia. Russia have a military base north of Damascus, and they have a lot of personnel there. And they tried to hit the rebels at the start of the rebellion. But look what happened. They completely collapsed, they pulled out, and all the power of Russia in Syria disappeared because they are so busy right now what's happening in Ukraine. That's for sure, obviously. The emphasis right now is in Ukraine. So really, Syria became secondary. And all these factors caused the collapse of the Syrian regime. See, Russia is also wounded, and they are so much immersed. I'm not so busy. They're immersed in the Ukraine war. Hundreds of thousands of the Russian military army, got killed over there, and so a lot of their armament was also hit badly there. So you have seen the U.S. technology, the German technology, Italian technology, French technology, and the British technology, in arms, impacting dramatically the war over there, and having Ukraine not necessarily winning the war, but at least not having lose the war in Ukraine.
You're pretty optimistic about Lebanon and the region as a whole. But how about Syria? We've got the Assad regime, it's just been days. It's just so many events that are just shocking. The regime fell within days. First, I'm guessing it was as surprising to you as everyone else. Was it surprising to you, or you expected that?
Frankly speaking, if in hindsight, when you see the collapse of Hezbollah, you see the dramatic weakening of Iran, and Russia's immersement in Ukraine, this was really expected, frankly speaking. And see, the collapsed in a matter of almost 72 hours.
It's crazy.
So really, what's next in Syria depends on what happens inside Syria. Clearly, the early indications are positive because the ex-prime minister, Jalali, now is cooperating with the head of the leaders, of the rebellious leaders. And the first council ministers met yesterday, or today actually, they met. So we are seeing early indications that they are not Daesh-oriented, not Daesh type. And they really gave the people the freedom and the rights to wear and dress, to do whatever they wish. So we are seeing early indications of this thing not moving the Daesh path or avenue, which is great news, frankly speaking, but it's too early to judge. There are too many forces, as I told you. You know, we have the Kurdish in the northeast. In the northwest, you have the Turkish-backed rebellious people are still there. And you have in the south, other factors also. That's where the American base is also. So really, if you look at the map of Syria, it's very much divided. So it's too early to judge. But we really hope to have one unified government that really takes over completely and spread all its hegemony on all the country, and really to create stability over there. Too early to judge, but the very early indications are not negative, but too early to judge. It still could go bad.
And do you think it's a possibility? I was speaking to the daughter of the defense minister on the day that Damascus fell, of the defense minister on Assad's government, and her uncle's was the leader of the rebels, and her dad's side is all with the rebels. So she's literally in the middle. Her family's split, both sides. And when I asked her what she expects the outcome to be, speaking to her family members on both sides, and she was pretty pessimistic. She thinks Syria could break up into different countries, different states. Is that a possibility?
Look, I told you, it's too early to judge. Now, the rebels control Damascus and the vicinity. But still, all other parts, northeast, northwest, southeast, and even southwest, all those are still dominated and controlled by different factions. Too early to judge. Now, clearly, we do not want to have this group only control Damascus. They have to have their dominance and control of all the Syrian borders. Too early to judge. But still, it could go any direction, frankly speaking. But the early indication is that there is some positive direction over there.
And what about President Trump's? He's pretty forceful when it comes to Iran, but he also does not want to intervene. He made that very clear about Syria as well. Do you think that's the right path for the US not to intervene?
Look, I think that the United States dominance in the world creates an obligation, United States, to interfere in certain areas as necessary. And by the way, you have a small military base in Syria already. It's already there. And you have around 950 people, personnel are still over there. So American forces are ready. The boots are already on the ground right now. Clearly, they are not involved in the war, but and they use surgical steps to hit certain areas, like they did a few days ago. So United States power and hegemony and control of the whole world is still there. You cannot rule it out. Now I understand Americans don't have any boots on the ground. We've seen what happened in Afghanistan. We've seen what happened in Iraq. These are pretty chaotic situations, and I'm sure. And I love the United States, and I don't want the United States to be hurt. And we don't want to see these images of how America was hurt badly in Iraq, and how the evacuation of the Americans took place in a disastrous way from Afghanistan. We don't want to see this happen, of course. Yeah. But at the end of the day, America's presence in solving problems and giving solutions cannot be compensated by any other country.
Before we move to President Trump, who you've known for a very long time, you have a history with, I want to go back to Israel. Israel struck, I lost track of how many, I think 240 targets in Syria. They just demolished.
255 exactly.
255 targets. They've demolished their military capabilities. They've obviously demolished Hezbollah, and in such a movie-like strategy with the walkie-talkies or the communication devices exploding. What do you think Israel will do next? Because they seem to be calling the shots right now in the Middle East, and no one's standing in the way.
Look, Israel has proved lately that they have a very strong control of the military part of the Middle East. But look, you cannot live in this region as Israel with all the neighborhood around you and not being supporting you or being on your side. At the end of the day, all these military strikes, they have to stop. Actually, I would say that they ran out of targets in Lebanon by hitting the Hezbollah leaders. No more targets to hit. They ran out of targets in Lebanon. And in Syria, we've seen they decimated all the military infrastructure of the ex-Syrian army and the navy. The Air Force was almost demolished. There was nothing there. So really it decimated that completely. Clearly the rationale is that they're worried and concerned to have all this military infrastructure to fall into so-called terrorist rebellious groups, which at the end this thing happened already, so we can't do much about it. But really, we have to look now about the peace, how Israel could live in this region and this neighborhood peacefully with their Arab neighbors. Clearly, they have peace right now with Bahrain, UAE, Morocco, and to a certain extent Sudan. Obviously, before that you had Jordan and you have Egypt. So with some 6, 7, 8 countries, they have an almost, I would say, normalized relationship. But still, this does not really help them in dribbling into tranquility and stability. So at the end of the day, without resolving the Palestinian states and resolving the issue of Jerusalem, which is very important, the Islamic and Arab world, there's no way you can have peace in the Arab world. And the official position of Saudi Arabia and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is that we need to have two-state resolution and to have Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, as the capital city of New Palestine.
Last question on this topic before moving to President Trump is how involved do you think Iran was in October 7th? I know we've seen all these different conflicting reports. How big of a role do you think they played, and do you think the intention was to jeopardize the normalization of relations between Saudi and Israel?
Well, look, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia came on Fox News and publicly said that we are so close into having a normalized relationship with Israel, clearly after certain conditions were met. It was public information. Clearly, one of the theories is that they tried to create an obstacle to that idea. Now, whether it's correct or not, it's academic. But I believe that there's no doubt about that Iran infiltrated Hamas. They were their military arm in Gaza. So whether they were involved explicitly or implicitly, there's no doubt you could see that the spirit of the Iranian revolution that is really very terrorist-oriented was there. It's like the Houthis. How in the hell would the Houthis that are more than 1,500 miles away come and hit Al-Aqaba and hit Eilat, the Israeli resort in South Israel? I mean, all this raison d'etre, frankly speaking, I think is all being orchestrated by Iran. So weakening of Iran is important for the stability of our region.
I think all eyes are on President Trump right now as he takes office in a few weeks. Yep. So you have a history of President Trump. I'd say you've helped him on at least 2 occasions when he's close to bankruptcy. You still own that yacht of his?
Yes, we did buy the Trump Princess boat, and now it's called Kingdom boat. Yes. And we did also buy from the Plaza Hotel.
When was that? When did you buy the Plaza Hotel?
This was in the late 1980s or early 1990s.
So can you tell me more about President Trump? Because we've seen him evolve over the years. Remember, he was even a Democrat early on. So you've met President Trump. You know him better than I, for sure. How is he now as a person? How was he before? And trying to get into his mind, do you think he's well-intentioned when it comes to the Middle East, when it comes to Iran, when it comes to normalizing relations between Israel and the Arab world? And do you think he's capable of achieving that?
Look, Trump was very clear, saying that he wants to have peace in the whole world, obviously, which is very positive, obviously. Now, as far as we're concerned, we want peace in our region. And clearly, with the forcefulness and the good mandate that President Trump had in the last election, this really should help really in having hopefully a fast process whereby peaceful acts could really stabilize our region. So I'm optimistic about having President Trump take over January 20th and give our region the opportunity to have, after all these years of civil strife and problems and wars and negative issues, is to have stability and peace here.
You're known to speak your mind. You were pretty public as well when you were upset with something Trump said. I can't remember what it was in 2016 about Islam. So you've always been vocal, similar to Trump. He's also very direct, and that's something that you praise in President Trump. What do you think are his strengths and weaknesses as a president?
Well, look, we have seen Trump in his first presidency, and now obviously he came back with a strong mandate from the population that voted for him, and the Electoral College also. So he has a sweep over there. So President Trump is going to come strong, and clearly that's his second term. So he has no third term to be elected, and not look forward for third term presidency. So I think he's now more free, more at ease to really take tough decisions, not only on the political front, but also on the economical front. We'll talk shortly about Mr. Musk's involvement and these huge time bombs we have in the United States, the budget deficit, the trade deficit.
As one of the biggest investors in the US.
Yeah. I mean, we are huge investors in the United States, so we'll talk about this in a minute. But on the political front, I believe that he is going to be very forceful, and we need that. We've seen how Zelensky began talking about the potential peaceful resolution for the Ukrainian-Russian war.
The narrative changed.
The whole narrative and attitude changed, which that's what we need exactly. I mean, understand there has to be some sacrifice from Ukraine, unfortunate, but we have to accept this fact maybe. So I'll keep this to my friend, President Trump, to manage the process, and I have trust in him, frankly speaking.
You've met, as far as I understand, again, the number of world leaders you met is mind-boggling, but you've met every single US president since George Bush Sr.
Since Ford.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you have it in your book here.
Since President Ford?
Yes. I was living in the United States, and I was living in the Bay Area, and there was an event in San Francisco, so I met President Ford over there, yes.
Wow. But there's one exception, that's President Biden.
Biden not meet. I did not meet him, but because I didn't have the opportunity to meet him. And when he came here, it was a very quick visit. I mean,
what are your thoughts? So it just seems like such a drastic change in the US. Like the whole world seems to be changing already before Trump is even president. But how is it possible that one person could lead to so much change? Obviously, it's not just Trump. It's like Trump and his friends, or Elon and his friends. You've got Trump, Elon, RFK, and the rest of the group, Tulsi and all them, Vivek. But what fascinates me is how, is it really an establishment that's going to be shaken up in the US?
The agenda that Trump is coming with is very aggressive, and on the domestic front, obviously, close the borders, get legal immigrants, reject illegal immigrants, control the budget deficit, cut the waste in the U.S. government. All these are incredible and important issues that the United States have to face internally. I mean, come on. All these millions coming from the southern borders to America illegally, I mean, no one will accept that. I will not accept that. Many Saudis and Arabs will not accept to have this in their countries. And clearly, the biggest worry right now is the annual budget deficit and the cumulative debt. Clearly, to have Mr. Musk lead that exercise to first of all control costs, cut the deficit, and hence cut the cumulative debt of the United States is very important, because now the debt to GDP in the United States has breached the 100% ratio, which is very scary and risky. Now, clearly, the United States is still a huge country, and you can still survive that, but why to have this huge cumulative debt that is a burden on each American? So I'm optimistic about Musk managing this process through the Dodge path.
You've also known Elon for a very long time. You've invested, so you did not invest in Tesla. You thought it was overvalued at the time. But now you've invested very heavily, over $1 billion in XAI. You were an early investor in Twitter, about $200 million.
Exactly.
And
now worth above $2 billion.
Congratulations. And instead of cashing out when Trump acquired Twitter, you've rolled it over into X. So you've got an incredible history with both President Trump and Elon. But why did it take? What fascinates me, that question I can't answer, there's different theories to it. Why do you think the existing administration didn't do the basics, didn't address the debt, did not address the inefficiencies in the government? The amount of regulation there is in some of these states is crazy. And then did not address the border, among other things. What were the hurdles? What changed more than just a new president? It feels like it's a systemic change we're seeing in the US.
Look, to be honest with you, thinking of the Democratic Party, I'm a Saudi, I'm a royalist. neither Democrat or Republican. But at the end of the day, I like the United States to be in good shape. It's very dogmatic. You know, the Democratic Party and the left-wing part of it, they believe in this laissez-faire situation. You know, open our borders. It's okay to have all those immigrants come, defund the police, you know, and laissez-faire situation. You know, I mean, I think it's went a bit too far. You know, really, the woke movement went a bit too far in the United States, and I think, to me, it was one of the main reasons why the Democratic Party lost. The left of the U.S. Democratic Party, the progressives, really took charge of that party, and they went too much to the left. And you know, and I think this was one of the reasons of why the Democratic Party lost.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. That's one of my favorite theories. I think it was on the All In podcast, it was either David Sachs or Chamath. They talk about when one party is in power for too long, they get too complacent, they go too extreme. And we've seen that with the left. And right now, eventually we might see that with the Conservative Party if they're in power for too long. And we saw the sweeping victory of President Trump. So your friend Elon, who you've known for a long time, he tends to surprise everybody out of nowhere. And one of the recent surprises is going all in on Trump. That caught me by surprise. Now, that started when Trump got shot. I want to go back to that time. Where were you when that happened?
Yeah, I was in Riyadh here when Trump was shot, and Musk took that quick decision from a nationalist point of view, from a patriotic point of view, and went all into Trump. But also, frankly speaking, you know, remember that Musk had a lot of he was on the Democratic side, and publicly he went with that. So he was not really Republican or pro-Trump. But to be honest with you, the Biden administration treated Musk very badly.
It's crazy what they did to him.
How can you have in the White House the EV industry meet over there without having Musk, the owner of Tesla, the majority owner of Tesla, being there? How could you own, with all respect to General Motors or Ford, when they were producing maybe hundreds of cars, less than 1,000 at that time, and not invite Musk, the godfather of EV in the whole world, was producing hundreds of thousands of cars, the Tesla owner, into that meeting. So clearly that left very bad taste, I think.
And that's one of many things. You remember
and many other stuff, sure.
Do you remember when President Biden sat behind the podium and he said, we need to look into, I can't remember what he said, but I'm paraphrasing, we need to look into Elon, and he's got too much power, and they ask him how, he's like, there's many ways of doing that, and he smiles. That's the president behind the presidential podium saying that. And then you had all these different, the SEC, the FCC, I was sitting with Brendan Carr from the FCC talking about this, all these different agencies target Elon and his companies. It was just heartbreaking to see that they're doing this to the biggest star, the epitome of the American dream.
Oh, yeah.
But just going back to the assassination attempt, how Elon went all in, from a strategic perspective, as such a big investor in Elon's companies, the gamble paid off big time. And I remember Tucker Carlson, when you remember that interview he did with Elon, he's like, what happens if Trump loses? And Elon was genuinely concerned. He's like, he laughed about it. He said the same thing on my show previously, you know, worried about his life. He said, I'll probably be in jail. I hope I can see my kids. Is that a genuine concern? Do you think that?
No, Frank, look, at the end of the day, to be honest and fair, the United States, with all its problems and issues, they have a good legal system. And then I think Musk was laughing and joking when he said you can't just throw a man in prison like this. I mean, there's a process and procedure they have to follow. And Musk did not break the law, obviously. So, look, now it's too late. Trump won, it's a fact now, and for sure, Musk will not be in jail. So for Musk, we're going to play a big role for the next 4 years in being positive towards the United States. All the ideas he has, and he's going to do it for free, obviously. He doesn't need the salary of $100,000. I mean, he reached already the $300 billion wealth target. Thanks for all the companies that he has that are all booming and doing great right now. So I think what Musk has on his mind, with the support of President Trump, if they can cut not $2 trillion from the U.S. budget, if they can cut $1 trillion, that's a huge achievement. Even $500 billion annually, that's a huge achievement. Clearly, I'm very fiscally conservative, and I would like him to cut as much cost as he can. And Musk came from the private sector. And when he took over X, we had 8,500 employees there. When he cut them, he went down to 1,500 employees. And I just met Linda a few weeks ago, and she told me, 1,500, we're doing great. We're doing even better than with 8,500. So this gives you an idea. From cutting from 8,500 to 1,500, that's almost 70-80% reduction. If you can do, part of that, partly United States, that'd be a huge achievement to save the day.
And there was one concern is that Elon will have too much power. But you had his competitors, Jeff Bezos and Sam Altman, they put out publicly, they said they're not worried. It was in an interview at the New York Times event.
Correct.
And they said they're not worried about him abusing that power. That's his competitors saying this. Can you tell me more about Elon? Like, is someone, we know his values, he's very vocal about his values, like you, like President Trump, he speaks his mind. Do you worry about him having too much influence in the US?
Look, Musk is a positive factor. When you have a man like Musk taking X, cleaning it up, and look, many of his enemies do tweet, or now we call them post. They post on X, correct? They hammer him and they attack him inside X. And sometimes he laughingly and jokingly answers them. That's number one. Look at X. Now it's a public discussion forum. Look at the SpaceX. Look how positive it is right now. It's going to save the day by getting those 2 stranded astronauts in the sky. He's going to save the day. Look at all these other companies. They all help the public and the
Neuralink,
people.
And then you've got the boring company.
And Starlink. Look at Starlink. Starlink is saving the day in many countries. And now they're connected with the mobile phone. The boring company, and I always talk to them and I tell them it's boring, but not boring, frankly speaking. Look at the things they're doing. All these are positive. And when I think of going to Mars, for example, these are positive stuff to humanity. EV, look at Tesla. This is a clean car that doesn't use any fuel. It's use electricity. How could this be a negative factor of the world? Musk could be a positive factor for the international world community and the peace of the world.
But when Elon wanted to buy Twitter, everyone thought it was overvalued at $40 billion. I'm trying to find, I wrote your tweet somewhere, but you essentially said that you found it to be undervalued. Now, obviously, you're an investor in Twitter. So do you remember I don't know if you remember the tweet.
No, don't worry. I wrote the tweet. I can answer.
Yeah, there you go. You
don't need a tweet.
So you were talking about how Twitter was undervalued. Can you tell me more about that journey when Elon first wanted to buy Twitter, and the entire journey from him taking over, from moving towards free speech, letting go of 80% of the staff, releasing the Twitter files?
Yeah. When Musk gave his offer, $54, I think, dollars, and I was against it. Not against it because I didn't want Musk to take over, because I didn't want to sell X at that time. Twitter, sell it at 54. I believe the price could be higher. So we called Musk. I called Musk and I had a call with him. I was in the desert. I remember that very well. So I called Mr. Musk. I told him, Mr. Musk, you want to take over X completely, or you'd like to have partners? Because I don't want to sell. I want to be with you. He said, Prince, don't worry. You're welcome. He say, how much you want to keep? I say, I want to keep everything. He said, Prince, guaranteed. You'll keep everything. All your shares stay with me. I said, thank you. Then I tweeted and supporting him. So I was against the fact that I didn't want to sell my shares at $54. Clearly it was valued at $44 billion at that time. And people say, it's nice, let's do it. I say, I don't want to do it. I want to be with this X, because X is is the new media of the whole world. And this was proven to be right. So I was against the fact that to flip my shares and get out of the company. I wanted to stay in X. So I called him, had this discussion with him, and from that time, we had many calls, and every time he sends me Jared here, his right-hand man, he comes to meet. I already met him twice, Linda came here, so now very close to each other. And I told him now, we are your representative in the Arab world and outside America. I said, Prince, we have it, we have a deal. So we represent them. I represent them, informally, proudly. So
what about what he did afterwards? Because he really shook, the same way he's shaking up the US government, he's shaking up Twitter, now X. What about when he let go of 80% of the staff? Was there anything he did that you were like, hold on, I don't agree with this?
I did discuss that particular matter with Musk, and when you meet him, remind him of that. I told him, when I look at the media, the old type media, the newspaper media, they're saying 80% of the staff is being fired. How inhuman is this? Look, all those 80%, they're going to find jobs somewhere else. But the media never talked about the fact that firing 80% of the staff, how many billions of dollars was saved in Twitter? More than $2.5 billion was saved. No one talked about that. Everybody talked about the personal side or the humane side. No one talked about the economical and financial side. The firing of those 6,500 people saved the day of Twitter because clearly revenues went down. Many advertisers pulled out. But that saved the day because there are two factors for income, high revenues and lower expenses. So those $2.5 billion saved the day in Twitter, frankly speaking.
But you were very early as well in saying that Twitter is going to reshape the media. You told me not to read quotes, I want to read one. We believe that social media will fundamentally change the media industry. That was you talking about Twitter. Twitter will capture and monetize this positive trend. That was you many, many years before Elon. That's when you invested in Twitter. And look where Twitter is today. Elon keeps saying, we are the media now. We are the media now.
Yeah.
How would you describe Twitter? Is it the everything app? Is it the world's town square? Is it the free speech platform? What is Twitter to you?
Okay. Today X is the forum for the interactivity of all the world leaders, influencers, and obviously the hundreds of millions of people. Twitter is being used daily by 255 million people and monthly by 620 million people. The ecosystem of Twitter is around 1 billion people. So Twitter is really now is the new media, frankly speaking. Clearly, if you talk to Musk and Linda and Jared, you can know many things are going to happen. Payments are going to come into it, and you have more videos going to come. So many other new interactive methods are going to be added to X. So it's going to be one-stop shopping in the social media, frankly speaking. And it's going to take some time, but it's happening. And next year, I expect this payment issue to be enacted.
Linda said it's going to be the first quarter. I'm sure she told you as well.
She told me that, yes.
Yeah. We only posted her interview yesterday, so it's just fresh. What would be, if you had to describe Twitter with one thing, is it the number one news platform? Is it the everything app? Or what will it be, in your opinion, in the next few years? I
saw in Twitter, now X, is being the one app for everything, frankly speaking. We're heading in that direction, slowly but surely. Clearly, when you talk to Musk, his right-hand man Jared, and Linda, you see the indications that that path or that dream is happening. Clearly now, they're taking licenses and permissions from all the states, and it was public information that there's a few states in United States will give their permission licenses soon, so they can cover all United States and get into the payment issue. So yes, I see this as being one app shopping for the whole thing.
The media has a habit of just targeting Elon. Obviously, they see X as a threat, and every time he takes a decision, whether letting go of 80% of the staff or rebranding Twitter to X, you've got all these headlines going after Elon. That's expected. But what about you? When you saw Elon, I remember I was meeting your head of investments earlier, and on his desk he had one of the towers here in, I think one of your towers here in Saudi, and he had on it the logo of Twitter. He still has the logo of Twitter. So Twitter is close to your heart. You've been an early investor. What did you think when Elon rebranded it to X?
Clearly when he branded to X had a meaning, another explanation. X really covers the whole spectrum of the expansion he had on his mind. So clearly, naming it X was directional, was because of the mission or the objective he had for X Twitter and now being X. And so I was really for it. And when I talked to him about, he explained to me why X. So X really was to really encompass all those new concepts and ideas to being incorporated into it, to really to create even more stickiness into it, and to expand the base from 250 million daily active users, DAU, into maybe 500 million, and the monthly users from 620 to maybe 1 billion, and the total 1 billion of potential users of X into maybe 1.5 to 2 billion.
Were you worried when you saw all these advertisers target X? So he brought Linda on board. She's an incredible CEO. He brought her on board, focusing on advertisers with a background at NBC Universal. They tried to choke him off. I remember also there was an organization, I can't remember their name, and it was a British organization, and on their agenda, it leaked. They had on their agenda, one of the bullet points, kill Twitter. I can't remember, it wasn't CFC, I can't remember what the organization was called. Did you speak to Elon back then when he was facing that pressure from those advertisers?
Yes, we did speak about this particular issue about advertisers and colluding, frankly speaking, against him, which is, in the United States is illegal. And you see how this began cracking when Unilever came back. And right now, the information I have from Linda is that more than 80%, maybe now it's 90%, advertisers coming back to X, frankly speaking. They came back even before Trump election. Now, clearly, after the alliance between Trump and X and Musk, clearly they have even more reason to go back. But clearly, Mr. Musk's objective was not really just to force him to come back, but they came back because they saw X as being the new media public forum.
One of those portfolio companies was Disney. And Disney, in one fascinating position of yours, Your Highness, is that you're friends with everybody.
And by the way, Iger is my friend. I always talk to him. And you know the argument between him.
What did you say? Don't go F yourself on.
Yeah, and
on
go and F yourself. I mean,
exactly.
That didn't help much.
That's Elon. That's right. You can't expect anything different. Were you mediating anything between them or not?
No, I did not mediate, frankly speaking. Look, they are mature people. Iger is a realistic person. I know him very well. He's a very good friend of mine. And we were in alliance with them in Disneyland Paris, and we're invested in Walt Disney. So yeah, we are friends with both, frankly speaking. But no, I don't think they need any mediation, because Musk knows that Disney is a force that is nice and good to have in X. And Mr. Iger knows that advertising into X is something good for Disney and all its products, consumer products, its parks, its movies, and etc.
And you're also friends with Rupert Murdoch, an investor in Fox. You're friends with Bill Gates. You co-own the Four Seasons, exactly, where we are today. But again, those people are not friendly, to say the least, with Elon. Has there ever been any instance where they called you like, hey, can you tell Elon to just ease up?
No. I just met Bill Gates a month ago, okay, and he had only good talk about Mr. Musk, and it was private discussion between him, frankly speaking. So really, knowing Musk and Bill Gates, and knowing Iger and Musk, who are really not the best friends, but they are my friends, that's okay. That's okay.
And the fascinating thing
I'm an independent person. I don't follow anyone. I'm a member of Saudi royal family. I'm independent, and I'm friend with everybody. If they don't talk to each other, that's fine. They talk to me.
Mark Andreessen is someone that you've known for a long time.
Yeah, I know.
One of the smartest people. I've had the pleasure of interviewing him a long time ago. And you worked with Mark and I can't remember who else. Jack Dorsey. You worked with Mark and Jack Dorsey as you helped finance Elon's acquisition of Twitter. So you obviously were all bullish on that acquisition. Can you tell me more about these discussions with Mark and Jack?
Yeah, Mark Andreessen, I knew him since I was living in California. And I met him when he used to be the boss of Netscape before it was bought by America Online and then merged with Time Warner. So I knew him since a long time. But then now, lately, we did establish again a discussion, and his partner came and met me, and I had a video call with him. So, because now we are in X together, XAI. So,
Meta.
Yeah, oh yes, and Meta. So we have a lot of things in common, and we keep talking to them about potential investments in the technology companies.
One of the smartest people today. Have you spoken much to, because he's very deep in AI?
Yes.
And have you spoken to him when you invested in XAI?
Yes, I speak to him before XAI. Yes. I mean, we always interact with Andreessen and all those high caliber investors in the XAI and in the technology industry.
And how do you compare X now to Twitter under Jack Dorsey? Because obviously Jack is your friend, and you invested back then. How do you compare Jack and Elon as different leaders? Because they're very different styles.
No, I mean, look at Jack Dorsey is a visionary also, and I respect him. I met him many times, and I mean, he did put Twitter at that time on the right path. But then really, he left, obviously, and the leadership of Twitter that came after him, I was interacting with all of them. And frankly speaking, they were not up to it, frankly speaking. And without naming names, I didn't really believe in what they're doing. So when Musk came as a savior of this whole huge and incredible and unique company X, I backed him up immediately because of his track record, obviously, in all what he did in the many companies that came before his ownership of X.
I feel like you can compare Elon and Twitter to the US government. It's like you've got that company, it's just become too big. Got that different hierarchies. We saw that with the Twitter files. the way decisions are made, the way we're seeing different biases, the way too many rules are making things too slow. Could we see the same thing that Elon did with Twitter happen with the US government? He comes in, cuts out a lot of the waste, that's DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, and just shakes up the foundation of the company. Can we make some comparisons to Twitter and the US government?
I mean, that's objective. Now, clearly, DOGE is not really an integral part of the government. It's on the consultancy basis, because DOGE is a department that's going to work on advising Trump on all these matters. Clearly, they have no enforceability they cannot enforce it. But if Trump gives the authority to Musk to give all these ideas that are drastic, drastic decisions you need there. I mean, in Twitter, when you cut from 8,500 to 1,500, that's drastic. That's thousands of people being fired. And if you duplicate that to the United States from cost-cutting point of view and efficiency point of view, and can cut hundreds of billions of dollars now, I think $2 trillion maybe on the high side annually, because you may have to get into social Medicare, Medicaid,
and that could backfire from a political
it could be fired also in political arena. So $2 billion may be too aggressive, but if you can cut somewhere between $500 billion to $1 trillion, that's a huge achievement. So it remains to be seen. The agenda is there, the path is there, the idea is there. Now it comes to execution. And look, Musk is an execution man for sure. I think Trump coming very aggressively, because there's a lot of low-hanging fruits that he can really act on immediately.
Knowing Trump and Elon for so long, what would you say are the biggest misconception for people on the left and people around the world that are very skeptical, especially when it comes to Europeans? What would you say are the biggest misconception about these two men?
Look, the agenda of Trump, backed by Musk 100%, obviously, is a huge agenda. It's not evolutionary. It is revolutionary. Not easy at all to do. And clearly, with Trump coming with House Representative, albeit with only 2 extra votes, he has the Senate with, I think, 3 extra votes on his side. Supreme Court majority are conservatives, and 3 of them appointed by Trump. So he has a lot of tailwind, frankly speaking. And if they don't deliver, frankly speaking, then a big blame will be put on Trump and the Trump administration. So no excuse not to deliver, frankly speaking. And I want them to deliver. We love the United States. We love the United States.
As someone, again, in the middle, as an investor in both Meta and Twitter, one thing Elon was very vocal about, and we saw in the Twitter files, is the amount of censorship that happened in the US by those social media companies. I'm not sure how well you know Mark Zuckerberg, but we've seen that. First, do you agree there was a lot of censorship in the US under the Biden administration?
Oh, yes. It's too extreme. Too much. Okay. I mean, I don't believe in laissez-faire, but not to have this extreme. You need to have regulation, but not over-regulation, obviously.
Do you see that shift happening among those people that were very critical of Trump, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos, who was meeting with Trump not long ago? Mark also met Trump very, very publicly about a week ago.
Mar-a-Lago.
Exactly, Mar-a-Lago. I'm sensing a shift in the perception around Trump. A lot of people that feared him as a president are starting to understand that there's either a different side of him or he changed as a person. I've heard both takes.
Yeah, but there's a third factor also. There's a de facto situation. Trump is a president.
Yeah. But when he was president in 2016, they were different.
Yeah, they were not pro-Trump, but I think the fact that Trump has been elected. So for Bezos, with all respect, I was an investor also in his company, and all respect to Zuckerberg, who is really the CEO of Meta. At the end of the day, they are businessmen. And they have to go where their interest is, frankly speaking. And you can't just be anti-Trump just because you're anti-Trump or just because you are pro-Democratic Party. At the end of the day, Trump is president for the next 4 years. And you have to be realistic. And they see Musk being there. So if Musk is the only businessman around Trump, they fear that this whole thing could really impact them. So they like to take at least small part of the party or the game to be involved with Trump. And Trump will not mind that. Because Trump also is president of the United States. He's the president of the whole United States, whether you voted for him or not. And that's his last term, obviously. So he's going to be conciliatory, and I think he's going to be decisive, but conciliatory.
Do you think he has changed as a president, as a person now compared to 2016, or is it the same person? I feel like he's learned a lot of things. He just
for sure. I mean, look, when you have first term and you're out for 4 years and you become president again, For sure, you learn many lessons. But the application of these lessons will only happen when it takes over January 2nd, January 20th. Now, we hear a lot of things about Trump. We only see, we have to give him the chance to take over January 20th and see what happens in the first 100 days, as you say.
Do you expect in those first 100 days for the war in Ukraine to end, or that's being too optimistic?
I hope. Look, if the United States impose its will on a potential peace, creating peace between Ukraine and Russia, I hope something will happen there. I hope.
Dennis, another question. I like to ask questions that I'm very curious about. One thing I'm always curious about is how much of what we hear publicly, what we hear online, or we hear in terms of statements, how much of it is true? So all these different world leaders, they say something, but everyone's perception is that behind the scenes are very different discussions. You have those behind the scenes discussions. You meet all those world leaders, all those business leaders. You've met them for decades. You've met all of them. So what do you say to the Americans that just don't trust what they hear anymore? They don't trust all these institutions. Is it really a two-faced system where the public hears one thing, what they want to hear, but behind the scenes it's a completely different narrative? Well, that's too extreme.
Well, look, unfortunately, many politicians overpromise to get elected. And once they get elected, they cannot deliver on what they promised, and they cannot deliver on what they committed to the public. Clearly, I believe that if you run on something and get elected on something or in a platform, you have to deliver on that platform. And clearly, if you cannot deliver on that platform, you have to be honest, straightforward with your people, and any country, not the United States, and say, I did not deliver on that promise because of A, B, C reasons. But in general, if you have a platform, you have to deliver on. Like, for example, Trump. Trump came on a platform that he's going to close the border, southern border, not to have the immigrants come there. That's number one. Number two, he wants to cut deficit. He wants to control the ballooning cumulative debt. So he has an agenda here. He's going to stop the woke movement. For example, I'm going to go to the toilet issue. He doesn't want to have a man or transgender man to go into a ladies' toilet. I mean, I'm for that also. This woke movement went too much to the left, frankly speaking. You don't want to have a man who was converting a woman to compete in the ladies' sports. These are things that I don't accept, for example, and I love to hear these things. I'm very conservative in my approach, and I like to hear these things. So on the political front, economical front, social front, immigration front, all these are, drastic decisions that are going to be taken. And we're going to see these in 100 days. I think Trump is going to deliver on them because he has created a coalition in the United States and even taken from the Democratic Party a lot of, Hispanics, blacks, and minorities, and he has to deliver to them, frankly speaking. And I think he's going to deliver, frankly speaking.
You're an investor in Elon on multiple fronts. Obviously, Twitter X now. You've invested over $1 billion in XAI, which we'll talk about in a bit. You're also an investor, one of the biggest foreign investors in the US. So you're invested in the country that Elon is trying to improve. As an investor in I'd say, two of his companies and in the country that he's helping improve, do you think he's doing too much for one person? It's one person trying to take humanity to another planet, one person making tunnels underground, dominating the EV market, Neuralink, Tesla, Starlink, free speech, and of course Doge. How can one person do so much?
Look,
and I'm probably asking the right person considering how much you do.
I believe the sky is the limit. You should stretch all your ability to do the maximum, no doubt about it. And that's why I respect Elon Musk, and I love what he's doing, because human being has a lot of potential, and he's unleashing that potential. Clearly, he has CEOs in all those companies that report to him and take his guidance. You have Linda, for example, in X, and you have each of his companies. You have good, strong CEOs that report to him. Frankly speaking, I'm for it. If you can do it, you should do it. The sky should be the limit.
And talking about Elon, one thing that's also fascinating is how loved he is. I remember when there was the protests in Brazil when X got banned. Actually, going back to Brazil, what were your thoughts when X got banned there? Do you think he went too far? When he's essentially fighting it in government. He's doing it in Brazil. He's done it to an extent in Pakistan.
Look.
How far could he go fighting for free speech?
Look. But at the end of the day, they resolved it, and X is back into Brazil even more stronger. So,
were you worried at one stage?
Not worried. Look, you have around 20 million users over there that are important for us I talk about ex-shareholder. But at the end of the day, they resolved it and the fund. And he did state his message very clearly. But eventually, they reached an agreement and he's back there right now. So I was not worried. I knew that something is going to happen eventually. Look, Musk is a very realistic person. He's a businessman and he's conciliatory. He's not confrontational.
Talking about Musk,
he will confront, but to a certain extent. Eventually, he will find
so he's
a solution.
Strategically confrontational, because he is confrontational, but there's a lot of strategy behind it.
I understand, but at the end of the day, we see in Brazil, he's a pragmatic person, and they resolved it with them.
True.
Yeah, it was resolved. He's a businessman at the end of the day.
A businessman, but he's also a very smart one, because now he's got so much support in Brazil. Remember when the protests were there, I've interviewed Eduardo Bolsonaro, I've had President Bolsonaro on the show. I remember when the protests were there, a lot of them had Elon and X on their t-shirt. I don't remember any protests ever to have the picture of one of the wealthiest people in the world on their t-shirt. How do you think, what differentiates some of the richest people in the world? So you got some that are loved, yourself, Elon as examples. You got some that are liked. Jack Dorsey's an example. Some that are disliked, Bill Gates, disliked, I would say, by the general public, if you look online, and some that are more than disliked, your friend Rupert Murdoch being one of them. Why? Why are some of these business leaders loved by the public and others not? What do you think some are doing right and others are not?
Well, it depends on the orientation and the direction of the businessman, obviously. I cannot say that really that Bill Gates is maybe in certain areas maybe don't like him, but Bill Gates also is doing great work in the whole world. We are involved with him, for example, in eradication of many diseases. Through immunization program, through also the polio eradication. We are with him, for example, in many projects. He has the BEV, the Breakthrough Energy program. To really that is a $1 billion fund that really funds a lot of venture capital companies in the world. So Bill Gates is doing a lot of good work. Now, clearly, some people may not like him here or there, but in general, a businessman has to do what he has to do. He has to apply his thinking. And God forbid, if he is not liked by a certain segment of the population, life has to go on.
If I had to answer that question, and let me know what you think, considering you know all the people I've mentioned, and you're an example of someone that's loved by the general public, it's the way they communicate. If you look at how Rupert Murdoch doesn't speak publicly that much, Bill Gates, he's got a certain reserved way of speaking. Mark Zuckerberg is the same. And then you've got someone like yourself, or Elon, you just speak your mind. I think that's the way you communicate is what makes a difference. Do you think that plays a key role?
Well, look, I'm like Musk, I speak on my mind openly, I met you today, for example, I didn't even know what question you're going to ask. If you're straightforward, you're honest, you have integrity, you have nothing to hide, you just don't need to prepare, just speak up what you have, very openly and freely. And whatever question you answer, spontaneously.
I won't name who, but just give the audience an idea of how it works behind the scenes. You haven't vetted any of the questions I have. You didn't even ask me what questions. And when I ask your team, like, should I ask this? What do you think of this? Ask anything you like. You can literally ask anything you like. Other interviews, they like to vet I had Hunter Biden on the show once. I had so many guidelines of what I can and cannot say. It was a ridiculously bad. That was my early days. It was a ridiculously bad interview. And I never did it again since. Moving to XAI, so another investment you have. In Elon, but also in AI as a whole. So I think it's your biggest investment. It's your only direct investment in AI. It's an AI company.
Yes.
Why XAI?
We have, for example, in China, Baidu also, but that's small investment. But the explicit and direct investment in a unique artificial intelligence company that competes with all the old guard like ChatGPT and Anthropic and Llama of Meta is really XAI with Musk. We bet on him, frankly speaking. And we came from inception with him. We're in round B, second round, and third round right now with him.
Her Highness Princess Lamia did say to me, you know everything about everything. You're Chief Investment Officer, so like, Mary, don't worry, you can literally ask about anything, because I was worried about asking you about AI. It was good to see that you know all the other competitors in the markets. What are your thoughts about AI as a whole?
Well, look, we're first inning right now, frankly speaking. And clearly, Musk told me that and went public that we were a bit late. But really, he compensated for that very aggressively. And he went, with a lot of aggressiveness, and he built this 100,000 GPU now in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, and there's another one happening right now. That's where the second round of funding will help building that huge data centers. So we're going to be there, frankly speaking. I'm very optimistic. It's no coincidence that all those big companies, Microsoft type, Google type, Alphabet now, Amazon, and now Musk, you need a lot of cash. This is very cash intensive and capital expenditure intensive situation. So you need those companies with huge cash reserves.
But Elon's also very critical, or not critical, I'd say very worried about AI getting out of control. So it's the first time in humanity that you have an intelligence that's going to be very soon more intelligent than us. Does that concern you?
Well, look, he said that, the potential that could be 80% positive and 20% negative. I, frankly speaking, believe that, look, a human race is very smart also. It depends on how you direct that AI movement. And really, a majority of people really are going to move AI into really being positive now. Clearly, some people have evilish approach. There's no doubt about that. AI or no AI.
I'll give you two examples and tell me what you think. So you had a recent article about an OpenAI, the newest model. It tried to copy itself and also tried to disable oversight mechanisms. So essentially get out of human control.
That?
That's OpenAI, the newest model.
Yeah.
Another example, there's an interesting one that Mark Andreessen, I don't know how he spotted it so early. It was like no one knew about it, but Mark somehow found it. It's called Terminal Truth. And I interviewed the founder, so Mark gave it early on a grant. And it was an incredible discussion, 2-3 hour discussion. And he started telling me some of the dark things the agent was trying to do. And one of the early things it did, it told this creator, I want to take over your body so you don't have to control me anymore. So you have all these different agents trying to get out of human control. And as AI, again, going back to Mark Andreessen, he's talking about any companies invested in that's using AI to make energy distribution more efficient. Do you ever think about AI getting out of human control? So if it doesn't need us anymore, if it's more intelligent, and if it has access to its own decentralized GPU power, its own power, has access to it, and has access to all these machinery, so can essentially control the physical requirements it needs to operate, and the physical requirements that allow the world to operate. I know it's very, futuristic.
That's doomsday scenario.
It is, but essentially, I gave you the OpenAI example of it trying to copy itself and get disabled oversight mechanism. And then, as you said, we're in the early innings. That doesn't worry you.
To be honest with you, no matter how AI gets advanced and developed, I believe the human race is still going to be in control. And you will be. This will not go out of control, frankly speaking. I think the good people in this whole world outweigh completely the evilish and bad people. Look, even without AI, you still have bad people. And clearly, I hear what you said right now about this thing going into the doomsday scenario, whereby the AI and the AI machines, control the whole world, and then you have this doomsday scenario. I'm optimistic. I don't believe it's going to happen, frankly speaking. Human race, no matter what, will be able to control AI.
So why do you think Elon will be able to meet monopolies like, I'm going to call them monopolies. I want to see if you agree Google and Meta. I know Google's being broken up, Alphabet. If you agree Google and Meta are monopolies. And if so, how do you think Elon can compete with them?
No, I think, look, at the end of the day, you need the data centers. You need the input that you're going to put into them. And I, frankly speaking, believe that XAI will be very able to compete with those companies. Actually, it's catching up very fast. I mean, OpenAI and ChatGPT, they came before, with their alliance with Microsoft, and now moving from non-profit into profit. So we were a bit latecomers, but I think the catching up was very fast. And you see the head of NVIDIA saying that what Musk did with XAI was very unique. True. And that's a big stamp of approval of what Musk is doing, frankly speaking. And I did tweet as a highly advisable not to bet against Musk. Highly advisable.
To be honest, I was also, as someone who obviously supports Musk, what he's doing, big supporter of X, very, loyal to X. I also get skeptical sometimes. I'm like, is Elon doing too much? But every time I say that, somehow he achieves something new.
Look, the human race is incredible, especially if the IQ and the brain is used heavily and intensively. And I believe Musk is utilizing his brain and IQ to the maximum. And I say to you, through you, Musk, thank you, Musk. Keep it up.
I think that it's not it's not an over-exaggeration to say he's changing so many aspects of society. It's mind-boggling how he does it. One of the biggest questions that I get, I've had Elon on the show 5, 6, 7 times, I can't remember how many times. So how does he do it? I have no answer how he does it. I've asked you that question because I get the same question about you, and I'll probably get it after this interview. How does the prince do so much? I don't know. I don't know how you guys do it. But moving to, we've talked about AI, we've talked about what Elon's achievement. When you made the decision to invest in XAI, did you have any opposition on your team?
Frankly speaking, zero opposition. We had discussions about which is the best path to get involved in Kingdom Holding and my private office, me personally, in the AI, in the artificial intelligence movement. There was consensus that going with Mr. Musk and his XAI was, we were the first one, frankly speaking. We were the first. We were first after Musk.
Okay, you're the first.
We were the first. We were first one in the first round and the second round. First one. Number one.
Wow.
To be involved with Musk in XAI.
Wow.
Round one, round two.
And you're still the second biggest investor in X right now? Second biggest shareholder?
We're second biggest shareholder in X and XAI. Both.
Wow. I want to talk very briefly about an industry. I asked your investment officer, your head of investments, I said, why aren't you guys invested in crypto now that we saw the ETF approved? We saw Trump being very friendly towards crypto. I know that your friend Warren Buffett is also very skeptical. Not sure if he's still skeptical. I guess he is.
He is.
His answer was, we cannot be everywhere, Mario. We're already in 14 different industries. If I ask you that same question, Your Highness, what are your thoughts on crypto, Bitcoin? Is that something you can even have the capacity, the time to look into it?
First of all, we are in 18 industries.
18, my apologies.
Yeah. No, it's okay. And number two is that, really, we don't really understand crypto very well. And I don't believe in it much. Clearly, right now, we see now it's ballooning right now. After the election of Trump now, Bitcoin reaching 100,000, now it's a bit less maybe. But we're not involved in that, frankly speaking, no.
And have you considered it at all with the changes that we're seeing?
Not so far, no.
And that leads me to my next question. What is your investment philosophy?
Well, most of our investments, if not actually all of our investments, are in companies that are unique. And clearly, to me, entry point is crucial. Is when to enter that company. See, almost uniformly, all the companies we're involved in, we entered at a very low price, very low reasonable price. Clearly, many of those companies, look, no one company is going to go straight up like this. Many companies will face difficulties either because lousy management or temporary lousy management, like X, for example, had lousy management temporarily, but then Musk came and saved the day. So either bad management or cyclical events, or circumstances outside their, like for example, COVID come and hit and hurt them. Still, many companies have still the potential to really to grow and expand. So most of our companies, if not all of them, we enter at a very low level, but with the potential of growing. And thanks God, most of the companies, if not all, the companies we invested in, they all ballooned and moved. As like you mentioned, that we put $200 million in X, and now it's above $2 billion. Our joint investment, Kingdom Holding, and myself.
Still growing?
And still growing. I mean, we expect this thing to go 3, 4, 5 times.
So you also invest, one thing I've noticed that you invest in, you don't kind of pick one horse in a race. When you like an industry, you invest in competitors. Is that just a coincidence that you found an entry point in both at different times? Like Meta X is one example, among others.
Yeah, for example, you have Meta and X. You have Accor, and you have, for example, Four Seasons. You have Bank Saudi Fransi, Saudi French Bank, and you have, for example, Citibank also. Yes, we have Jorsang, we have Savoy in Plaza, for example, that we manage. Yes, so we have Uber and Lyft, and now Careem. So these are all promising industries, and they're doing great. So yes, I mean, we do not restrict ourselves into one. Maybe the only exception is artificial intelligence, and now we are only XAI, the only exception maybe.
If you find a good entry point in other competitors?
Sure. I mean, for example, Four Seasons. I entered Four Seasons at $150 million, and the latest round was with Bill Gates at $10 billion. And today's valuation of Four Seasons is around $12, $13 billion. Accor, I began with 5 hotels. 5 hotels in the United States, very small hotels, at maybe was, I think, $30, $40 million. And now the market cap of that company, Accor, is $11.5 billion. and so on. Yes.
Can you give me some examples of investments that you've made? Because I feel like at times you have to be contrarian. Because when you find the right entry point, for it to be the right entry point, it means most people, the general consensus is that this is not the right entry point. Otherwise, it wouldn't be.
We wait.
Okay.
We wait. We
For
wait
something to happen.
We wait until the price comes to us. We don't follow the price upwards.
And what leads that price? That could be anything to lead that price. It could be internal mismanagement. It could be
Yes.
financial distress.
Exactly. For example, in Snapchat, we invested in Snapchat. The price did hit 80, 17, 70, 75, I think. We waited until, and this thing price crashed to single digit. And now we invested in Snapchat with Mr. Avon. He was here just, sitting here actually 2 weeks ago. And so really, we wait until the price comes, the entry point, that will give us good IRR or ROI.
So FOMO is not something that you struggle with. You never get too excited when something's just blowing up.
No. There's no rush. We wait. Patience is important until we go and target the company. We only invest in those companies we believe in and add value to our portfolio.
So I remember in one of your interviews, they asked you, how did you make your first billion? Not sure if you remember that question. They're like, usually ask the question how someone made their first million, but Your Highness, I want to ask you how you made your first billion. But I'll ask the question differently. If you were today, starting Kingdom Holdings, where would you start today?
Well, look, when I started, my father, I came in America and he gave me $30,000. And clearly, I worked and I began January 1st, 1980 at exactly 7 a.m. in the morning. So I worked 6 months, went bankrupt. So I went back to him. I announced my first bankruptcy. I said, okay, fine, no more bankruptcies. So he gave me $300,000. So he added zero. So I took $300,000 and worked again. I think a year and a half, I went bust again, just after a year. I went bust again. So I went to him and said, finish, no more. I'm going to give you a house, I'm going to give you a land, build a house there, and you can mortgage that house. So yes, I took the land, and he built my house, frankly speaking, and I went out to the Citibank in Saudi Arabia, and I still have the paper, and they gave me a loan. And ever since, we took off thereafter. It was in the early 1980s.
What was your first big success? You remember that? Wow, what did I just do?
First big project, first actually was a small project. It was in construction. I began in construction and get associated with the Korean companies. At that time, Korean, Pakistani, Indian companies were very popular in Saudi Arabia. So I went to joint venture with them, giving services, and I'm being subcontractor with them, and also real estate. So construction and real estate. That's how we began the process. First project we got was a small project of, it was around $15 million. When our profit was around, I think $500,000, I think, or $700,000. That was my first project.
So if you go through that journey and you put yourself today in the world we live in today, how would you do it if you had that $300,000 you had to start from scratch again?
Now, these days, it's not that easy, frankly speaking, at all.
More competitive.
It's very competitive.
More efficient markets.
Very competitive market now, and very efficient now. It's not going to be easy at all. It took me a lot of years really to expand, to grow. Clearly, I was the right person, the right time in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia at that time began the boom, frankly speaking. Real estate, you can buy, this thing goes up 50, 100%, 100% in a matter of months, and a lot of construction taking place here. So it came right time, just early 1980s. And then we expanded, obviously, until we grew up.
Would you still focus on the US as you did in your career?
Yes, most of our portfolio is the United States. We have, billions of dollars in the United States, me personally and Kingdom Holding.
At one stage, you were you were the biggest, I think, foreign investor in the US.
We are, jointly, Kingdom Holding, and we are, if not the biggest, we are among the biggest single investors in the United States, yes.
What are the other markets that you're looking into? I know you're invested in multiple markets, but is there any that are under the radar right now? India's very exciting.
Look, in India, for example, India and China, for example, in China, we have a lot of investments. And as I told you, Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba, Didi, many other companies also. But for example, we have many hotels through Four Seasons, tens of hotels of Accor, hundreds of hotels actually Accor. So we have a lot of investments directly and indirectly in India and China also.
So you already have that exposure?
Yeah, we are all over the world, frankly speaking. We are present in all 5 continents and all the world.
It's interesting. I think that question, if I asked you about the US economy, would it be different, your answer, would it be different now compared to 3 years ago if I asked you that same question under Biden, before Trump got the traction, or obviously now he's being re-elected?
Well, clearly, the United States budget deficit is expanding even more. the cumulative debt is going up, and now just servicing the debt is $1 trillion every year, and that's higher than the budget of the defense budget, which is around $750–800 billion, and that's already inflated. So it's almost out of control, frankly speaking, when you have $1 trillion just to service the debt, service the debt, not to pay the debt. That's really not sustainable, even in the United States. You can't grow this forever. And that was one of the items of discussion between me and Musk. That particular issue exactly.
And that's his main focus right now.
It is one of his main focus, obviously. He still wants to go Mars,
Of course, and want to build tunnels underground. But what about I feel there's systemic issues, because democracy as a whole is still an experiment if you think about it. And I feel like we're starting to see, I wouldn't say flaws, but we're seeing that experiment be tested over the last few years. And that's in the unelected officials in the US that have too much power. I'm not sure if you believe that's the case. You've got the polarization that we're seeing, where democracy leads to things being too slow to move, and there's too much bickering happen, which you were critical of the bickering in the US in one of your interviews over a decade ago, and we're still having that same issue today. But you're still investing in the States. Do you think that experiment of a democracy is still working despite all these different...
You see that there's a lot of bickering in the US political system, for sure. But the economy in the United States is moving. Moving. There's a complete separation between what's happening here and there. It shows the resilience of America. Rule of law, freedom of speech, freedom of press. I mean, that's playing a big role in having companies, people going investing in the United States. Now, on the economical front, as I told you, it's not sustainable, and they have to have a solution for that. Now, clearly, to answer your question explicitly, there are cracks in the democratic system, for sure. There are cracks in many countries. Look at, for example, we hear the word now, illiberal democracies, such as, Hungary, India, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore. You hear the word illiberal democracies is popping up. Clearly, there are cracks, and this is happening because many countries are really facing economical difficulties also. Clearly, COVID did not help. It did impact a lot, but you are seeing that the cracks in the political system, the democratic political system.
What about the point? So when I mentioned unelected officials having too much power, you nodded. Not sure if you nodded in agreement. Do you think that there is unelected officials in the U.S. or what Trump or Elon or some call the establishment? Do you think there is that establishment in the U.S. that has just way too much power over the people that are voted into power?
Supreme Court is not elected. They're appointed by the president, approved by Congress.
What about all these different agencies?
I understand that. So you're talking about the agencies, the federal agencies. Yes, they do have power, but no matter how much power they have, at the end of the day, they go to the executive branch to execute. I will not put too much credence into it, frankly speaking, and I don't like to blow it out of proportion. No matter how the FST type, for example, entities are strong, they have to go to and through the executive branch in the United States for approval and rubber stamping.
So when you look at something like the assassination attempt on President Trump, when you look at something like this, are you in the lone wolf camp? Do you think it was just an independent actor? Or do you think there's things we don't know and
look, at the end of the day, we have to keep this from the investigation, frankly speaking. Sometimes people believe in this conspiracy theory and say assassination 1 and number 2 and the link together. I cannot judge. From what I see, they seem to be independent and not linked to each other. But look, they're investigating right now, and we have to wait for the investigation.
Talking about conspiracy theories, I was one of the people. Again, I'm a realist as well. When I first heard the lab leak theory, I'm like, there's no way COVID came out of a lab. And I've got report after report, including the latest report, which I'm sure you've read, that essentially point as that being the most likely scenario. It was unfathomable during COVID. The belief of it, you would be censored on social media if you said that it came out of a lab. So, and there is that narrative now gaining traction that all these conspiracies are starting to become reality. We saw that with the Hunter Biden laptop as another common example. Is that something you'd agree with? Do you think that a lot of these, what were considered conspiracies, are turning out to be true? And what are your thoughts on the way COVID was handled, for example, and the revelations that we're seeing right now?
Look, we know for a fact that the COVID-19 began from China. Now, whether it was triggered intentionally through a lab or came coincidentally, I don't think it's for me to judge, frankly speaking. I don't think this is in my area of expertise, to be honest with you. I don't want to get overboard and just tell you, Alwaleed knows everything. I mean, I live in this whole world, and I have my own judgment on many issues, but whether it came through the lab or it came through an incident, I cannot judge, frankly speaking.
Talking about the American economy, one thing that President Trump is going to be focusing on is the US dollar and BRICS. And he's been very vocal about it. He's been very vocal about NATO. What are your thoughts on the US dollar? What are your thoughts on BRICS as an organization, as a group?
Well, US dollar is still the force to be reckoned with. Currently, the competitors are, either the yen in Japan, or the renminbi, yuan in China, or the euro in Europe, or the UK pound. Clearly, all those cannot compete with. Now, the United States has, in circulation, the dominance of US dollars is more than 82, 83%. So we are way ahead. We hear about the BRICS coming and saying that, we'd like to have our currency and go and compete with the dollar. Now, clearly, that's very much politically oriented discussion. And Trump was very aggressive on that and say any country that comes is involved in this alternative for the US dollar, or finding an alternative for the US dollar, we're going to put 100% tariff on them. Clearly, this will impact India, will impact Brazil, will impact China, and even South Africa. And clearly, Russia is maybe unique because there's no relation with them. I believe, look, the US dollar will be king for a long time to come, no matter what happens, whether it's the BRICS, the new currency, or all the other currencies that are
despite the debt issue.
Despite that issue, we have the debt right now, and still you're dominant because other countries have their own problems also. I mean, Europe and UK and China, they have their own debt problems also. So they are not problem and debt free and problem free also. So they have their own problems also.
And you've got on the other side, you've got the rising power of China. You talked about it a lot again in your interviews for a long time, and you talked about the American hegemony not being threatened, but not being the only superpower on Earth. What are your thoughts on China's growth from a financial perspective? And then we talked briefly about Taiwan earlier. From a geopolitical perspective, what could that lead to?
Well,
so if you look historically, whenever there's a superpower and another power is gaining ground and slowly becoming another superpower, it's tough to have two superpowers coexist.
You had the Soviet Union, superpower, and still coexisting with the United States.
Not for long.
I understand. Then the collapse, but you have Russia. Look, China is a big force. When you have 1.35 billion people, and growing around even 5%, which is not very high now to China in their standards. China is a big force to be reckoned with. They're coming very strongly, and the centralized system that they have there through the communist regime is helping them, frankly speaking. They all go one direction. I remember, I was in China. I met the Chinese leadership there. And then I went
President Xi Jinping?
No, before Xi Jinping. And then I went to India. I met the Prime Minister, the one before Modi, the Sikh man. And I asked him, I was alone. I say, you were China, competing head on in the 1980s. But China went like that, and you're still behind now. What went wrong? I said, Prince, China, they have a political system. The head of the communist regime, push a button, 1.5 billion people, 1 billion, it was 20 years ago, move one direction. I push a button, all the 1 billion people go a different direction. I have the Congress party, I have the other party, and they have the sex system, you have, our democracy, the press, So he told me that the centralized system does help at the end of the day. So really, China are now, the economy is not up right now. They're facing some issues and difficulties, but you see now they're taking big moves to rectify that. And see the stimulus that took place a few months ago, they announced it, and yesterday they re-emphasized it also. So, look, China is down, but not out. I think they'll get out of it.
You just mentioned something interesting that I'd like to talk about, is the centralized power. So I try to be very open-minded. Even though I support free speech, I understand that's an experiment. I support democracy. I lived in Australia. That's an experiment. Centralized power has its advantages.
Yes.
China is a great example. A lot of the Arab countries are great
Singapore,
examples.
Korea, Taiwan.
Exactly.
They have their own democracies. I was sitting with Lee Kuan Yew, the establisher of modern Singapore. He was having lunch with me in my resort. He said, Prince, I have my own democracy. I will not accept the US democracy. I will not accept the UK democracy. I have my own democracy. Clearly it means you have freedom of speech, but not to the extreme that they have.
So what are your thoughts on this experiment, on this other system of running a country, of having more centralized power? What I look at it is that the advantage is things move faster, especially if it's a right leader. If you have someone like Elon with centralized power, a lot of great things can happen. But at the same time, what happens when someone else takes over after Elon? That, in my opinion, is the risk of centralized power. What are your thoughts on it as a system?
Centralized power with good leadership, you have good results. And good results. Look at. I'll give you a good example. Not China, for example. Look at Korea, Taiwan, Singapore. Pretty good examples. Have centralized powers there, but they're doing good. They're not doing bad at all. I mean, they did spectacularly well, all these countries.
Talking about different ways of running a country, another country that's done really well is Saudi, the country we're in today. You've got Project 2030 that everyone's just waiting for, which you're an investor in. Your head of investments told me that about 40% of your investments are in Saudi, is that correct?
Yes. We have, a lot of investments in Saudi Arabia, United States. Yes.
Can you tell me more about that journey to bring Saudi? So when I was asked by Her Highness Princess Lamia about my thoughts on Saudi, I'm like, it's a completely different country.
Yes.
And just so quickly, and she said the same thing. She said it just, every morning she wakes up and there's something new. You were an advocate of the Saudi we see today, especially women's rights, for a long time, before the Crown Prince. How did that transformation take place, and what's in store for Saudi?
Look, Saudi Arabia, before 2015, when King Salman took over, between, I would say, 2005, 2015, we stagnated. We did not really advance a lot. We were closed. Price oil was high. We were happy with what's happening, but we didn't have a good strategy and plan really to diversify.
Say complacent is
I would say complacent. Yes. 2015, King Salman took over. Prince Mohammed bin Salman is the engineer of the whole thing. They put the country back on the right path, frankly speaking, and to have alternative for oil. You cannot have a country big as Saudi Arabia dependent, 80% of its budget, 90% of its export, and most of its GDP depend on one product, which is oil. You are under the mercy of having price oil remain high, which is not sustainable, obviously. So they went into a diversification program, which is an integral part of the 2030 program, which is being implemented now, executed very meticulously and successfully. So we are on track now. I'm very optimistic about Saudi Arabia, and we are heavily invested in Saudi Arabia. We are in the tourism industry, whether it's hotel management or having hotels being owned by us. We are we have the real estate, we have commercial real estate, we have industrial projects, we have a school, we have in healthcare, we are in education. We are almost all sectors of Saudi Arabia right now.
The Crown Prince has been very progressive in transforming Saudi. And some examples is women's rights, lifting the ban on women driving, allowing women to obtain passports, travel. Your father was a proponent of a lot of what we're seeing today, but he was exiled back then, out of the country. You were a proponent of a lot of the same values, and we saw a lot of these materialize. What changed in Saudi? Is that complacency changing? Is it just Western influence? Why do you think that the response to your father's values was so different to the response to yours?
No, Prince Talal was not exiled. Prince Talal left Saudi Arabia because he had certain demands at that time, and they were not fulfilled. So he just left. But then he came back, and he was assimilated and be part of the system. Now, as my point of view is that I have access to the government. I have access to the king, who's my uncle. I have access to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. I have access to all ministers, all 100% of them. I deal with them, interact with them, so communicate. And if I have any view, I discuss it with them, debate it with them. And actually, I will give you a list right now of, I had almost 20 demands from Saudi Arabia before 2015, and they're all met. And I'll give a list of of these demands.
And who drafted that list? Oh, you drafted it.
My
so
demand,
you had demand to
my demands from during King Abdullah era for these demands to be implemented in Saudi Arabia. And all of them were met after 2015 by King Salman, Mohammed Salman. All, 100%. I'll give the list right now.
And how's the working relationship now with the Crown Prince? How often do you speak?
Excellent. We interact. We meet frequently. And, he's young. So he uses WhatsApp. He uses, quick communication.
He's also a gamer?
Yeah, he's a young man. So, I just met him a few weeks ago.
What's his vision for Saudi, and how is he as a person? I've never had the privilege of meeting him. How is he as a person? Is he as energy? When I first met you, you beat me when it comes to energy. Is he the same person? What's his personality?
Very energetic, very dynamic, and very futuristic oriented, and good planner for next 10, 15, 20 years. And that's what each leader should be, really. When you do it 1, 2, 3 years is too short of a span in the history of any country. So yes, he has 5, 10, 15 year planning always.
And he's also been very strategic as well in maintaining, but also leveraging different relationships when it comes to the East versus the West.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that strategy of his?
Look, Saudi Arabia is we have good relation with the United States, good relation with Russia.
Similar to your personal stance.
And even Ukraine. The president of Ukraine came here many times. We contributed to him. We also helped mediating between Russia and Ukraine and freeing many prisoners. So really, we're good with India and Pakistan. You know what I mean? So we're good for everybody, frankly speaking. So we took a centrist point of view, and Saudi Arabia's foreign relationship is excellent, and we're building bridges with everybody, frankly speaking. That's very positive to me. I like it.
It is, yeah. And I gave the example of when someone asked me why I live in Dubai. It's a kind of similar position, whereas Dubai, Saudi, especially the Arab world, is acting as a Switzerland of the world. It's like all sides can come together. That's one of the reasons I like to live in Dubai. But then you've got the elephant in the room, which is Palestine and Israel and October 7th. We've talked about your stance. What is the stance of the Crown Prince on that matter, and how is he looking at normalized relations with Israel?
I told you in the beginning of the discussion that he was on Fox publicly, and he said that he used that term, I think, we're very close to having diplomatic relation, but this was obviously before 7th October. And clearly, publicly, our Saudi Arabia position, announced by Crown Prince, is that we will discuss with Israel the normalization, but the condition to having a resolution, fair and just resolution for the Palestinian case, namely 2 states, Israel and Palestine, and having Jerusalem as being the capital city of Palestine. These are the conditions set by Crown Prince, the CEO of Saudi Arabia, I use this term, to engage with Israel and normalize with them.
So we've talked about all the great things happening in Saudi, and we've also talked about the experiments of different ways to rule a country. And, I have the ways that I support. I think there's no right or wrong ways. And one thing that the Crown Prince really focused on is he was very strict when it comes to dissent. The way I see it as a personal opinion as someone that's never been in such a position is that it allows things to move a lot faster. It allows change to move a lot faster. On the other side, it goes against free speech and what Elon stands for. How do you think the Crown Prince and the Saudi government balances this position where you've got to move fast and this isn't a democracy, but at the same time, you personally are a big supporter of free speech, and I'm not sure what the Crown Prince's position is on that. I know it's a very delicate question, but I'd love to know how this balance goes behind the scenes.
We'll answer it very openly. Look, I'm an open person. Look, Saudi Arabia is a very happy country, relaxed country, and there's a lot of open discussion here about what's next for us and what we're doing and how to improve things. Clearly, we take tough position against extreme ideas to the right and to the left. Remember, we don't want Saudi Arabia to disintegrate also and to be controlled by those right-wingers also who are really anti-establishment, anti-woman, anti-liberty, anti-freedom, anti-assimilation of ladies in the system. So really we are not anti-dissent. We are anti those people who are really who have other causes and other reasons to create disruption in Saudi Arabia. We are firm against them. But, it's very happy ambience here.
So there's certain lines being drawn to allow the system to operate efficiently and to allow the things that need to be done to move on from the old Saudi to the new Saudi, if I may say that.
Yeah.
And essentially those lines are extremism is not allowed, including extreme ideas, which are allowed in some other democracies. But in Saudi, the decision is like, we don't want our system to have that. Let's see those demands. Okay, so these are the 21 demands, reforms that Prince Alwaleed had called for 20 years ago. All were implemented.
100%.
First one, 100%.
100%.
Activation of the Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Complete. Everything.
That's obviously been
Single
activated.
Each single one.
Increase the returns of the Sovereign
And
Wealth
many
Fund.
of these were public, on X.
You've made those demands publicly.
Many of these are on X.
So, and you've played a role. I think Kingdom Holdings played a role in the second one, increasing the returns of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, because you co-invested a lot. Reduce the government's dependence on oil.
PF is invested with me also in Kingdom Holding.
Oh.
Yes,
Oh,
the government, 16% they own.
So that means the government indirectly owns the stake in X, XAI, Meta.
Indirectly.
Reduce the government's dependence on oil. That's in progress right now with Project 2030. You're an investor in Project 2030, obviously.
We are part of it, 2030.
Diversification of financial resources, exploration of mining, Aramco IPO, congratulations, I know it's years ago, control of government expenses. So how's that going? Can I stick on that one? Because obviously it's another tricky position is controlling government expenses, but at the same time you want to make sure the public is not impacted too negatively.
Well, I mean, costs were really out of control, and now they really control them a lot better now.
Okay, so it's been going very smoothly so far. It's in progress as well, correct?
Yeah.
Stopping the overconsumption of fuel, tackling unemployment issue. What's the unemployment now in Saudi?
Now, at the peak was, 13, 14. Now we are just around 7.2.
Oh, wow. Can you elaborate on point 10?
Saudization. Before, many Saudis were out of work. I mean, they were not part of the system. And big part of Saudization is having women being accepted in the society. Women could not drive first. Women could not be hired for certain jobs. Now, equality. Big part of the Saudization really is to have women being assimilated, approved, and accepted in the society. And that happened.
Did you face a lot of resistance when you did open up the country to things like concerts, for example?
Yes. I mean, we have the biggest concert company, Rotana. Before there was resistance, but now part of the system completely accepted completely. I used to be criticized on X. Whenever I used to tweet on anything, people would say, why have concerts? No concerts. But now, after the openness of Saudi Arabia and the acceptance of the concerts and having singers sing in Saudi Arabia, that's it. There's no more taboo anymore right now.
You've got the tackling of the poverty issue, number 11. Number 12, gender equality, which we've talked about. 13,
we have a program, for example, anti-poverty. We have a program, 10,000 cars, 10,000 houses for the poor people in Saudi Arabia. And this has been executed jointly with the government. And we have a program to give away subsidies to many of the Saudi that are in need. Huge problem. You'll see all this in the paper I gave you here.
Yeah, I think your philanthropic
philanthropy is an integral part of our ecosystem
and values as well.
Yes,
and that would going through everything you're doing, all the initiatives they will take an hour.
Gender equality.
Yes.
For example, here on this floor, 55% are ladies. 55, not 50. Alwaleed Foundation that is involved in philanthropy, 100% 10 Saudi ladies. My office, my home, 100% leadership ladies.
My life is the same.
Completely. And it's by quota. No discussion. By quota. Execute. Sometimes you discuss things, but you have to do something by force. And this was done a long time ago, because if you give them a chance, they say, just do it.
So essentially kind of led by example. You wanted those values implemented in the country, you did them within your organization.
Happened. I'm not here to say, try it. When you test it and it's successful, just do it.
Allowing women to drive, allowing women to work in all areas.
My daughter was the first lady to drive in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow, I didn't know.
It's on Twitter also.
I didn't know. I would have loved to be where she now.
We were 11:59 behind the wheel, and at 12 o'clock when the time set, we went out and we tweeted it.
You were with her in the car?
First one. She was driving, I was next to her.
didn't see
And her
that.
granddaughters were in the back. It was a tweet also.
Does she live here?
Yes, yes. And all on X documented.
I'm going to find it. Establishment, so allowing women to work in all areas. Establishment of mini economical council
It
of
happened.
ministers.
It happened. Shared by Crown Prince. Many council ministers. We have it right now. It's functioning.
Number 16 out of 21, deportation of illegal labor employment. Was there a lot of illegal workers here?
Plenty. Plenty. It's a cleaning up right now. Plenty.
So essentially, you've dealt with the same issue that the US is dealing with.
Exactly. Smaller scale.
Number 17, introducing cinemas in the kingdom.
It happened.
It did. When did that happen?
One of the first cinemas opened here in Fox Cinema here. Opened
In this building?
Downstairs.
What was the first movie you played?
I don't remember.
That would have been good to play, like some iconic movie.
I don't remember.
Number 18, firing corrupt ministers.
Yes, happened.
And that was obviously
happened already.
a few years ago.
Housing crisis.
Yes,
And we put our mouth where money is. Our money was mouth is.
We invested heavily in that.
We do it.
Yeah, true. Number 20, elimination of corruption. That happened at the same time as point 18. And number 2, so that was number 21, social, cultural
Rotana.
openness. That's Rotana. When did you hand over
All
those?
this between 2000...
20 years ago.
Oh, this is between 2011, 12, 13, 14.
Wow.
All these. And that's why, I'm a big supporter of Crown Prince. When you have 21 demands, and they all happen, and more, at the end of the day, we have the interest of Saudi Arabia, number one.
The last, again, if I ask you all the questions that I have, would go on for another 5 hours. But the last thing I want to ask you about is some of the relationships you have. When I walked into the office, you've met everybody. When I say everybody, I mean everybody, every world leader. We're talking, obviously, Assad is being replaced. You've met Assad.
I met the father and the son.
And the father and the son. You've met. We talked about Palestine. You've met. I'm not sure if you've met Arafat.
Oh, I went twice to Gaza.
There you go. Oh, you went personally to Gaza?
Yes, twice.
When was that?
In the 1980s. I went there. I met Arafat there. It's all in your book you have here.
So it must be heartbreaking to see what's happening there.
You see, oh, sure. Unfortunate.
I would love to ask you about a few of the people that you've met. We've talked briefly about the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, about him as a person. I'll ask you though again, how is he behind the scenes as a person?
Crown Prince is, even the king, is very humble, down to earth, jokes, fun. It's just very normal. When you sit down with them, oh my God, they give jokes, they talk, they interact. I mean, it's very normal, both the king and Crown Prince.
How would you describe President Obama and President Bush? You haven't met, and Trump. How would you compare?
Well, I met all of them.
True, exactly. You haven't met President Biden, but you've met Obama, Bush, and Trump.
But I'm very close to Bush 1 and Bush 3, Bush 2.
Bush 2. Okay.
Closer than the Obama.
And how would you describe all of them? As
very good friends, especially Bush the father, very good.
And we talked about Bill Gates earlier. I'd love to know more about Bill Gates because you know him extremely well, having co-owning.
We are with him in business, we are with him in philanthropy, in charity, in many projects with him, frankly speaking. It's very, look, Gates really wants to make a lot of good stuff in the world, a lot of good things, transformational. I mean, he put a lot of money where his mouth is, frankly speaking. So really, this opposition against him, really, I don't understand very well because I know what he's doing. He's doing a lot of good for the whole world, frankly speaking. Just like Musk, to be honest with you. I have to be fair and objective.
Yeah, it is fascinating to see the perception, public perception of both men.
I know he has a program with me and with others also to eradicate polio in the whole world. And right now, polio is eradicated in the whole world. The last 3 countries were Nigeria, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Nigeria is over now. You have maybe 6-7 cases in Afghanistan because of religious reasons, they against immunization, and Pakistan made a few cases. So, I mean, a lot of things are happening with him, or positive to the whole world.
It is fascinating to see that kind of that distrust in organizations and anyone part of those. World Economic Forum being the best example.
And his biggest backer is Buffett. I mean, we back both, obviously, but Buffett is...
He's very close with friends with Warren Buffett as well. He's a friend of yours.
Most of the contributions that go into the now Bill Gates Foundation goes because the huge contribution from Warren Buffett, frankly speaking. So you have to give credit to each person. Buffett, Bill Gates, they're doing a great job, frankly speaking.
Another friend of yours is Rupert Murdoch and his family.
Rupert Murdoch, I know him since 30 years. I mean, we are allies with him in News Corp, and then News Corp on Fox, obviously. But obviously, we divested before he sold it to Disney, a year before. We pulled out. We sold all the so-called old media portfolio. We sold it. And then obviously Murdoch himself merged with Fox and kept News Corp and part of Fox.
And what do you think is the biggest misconception about Rupert Murdoch?
Well, look, Murdoch, has Wall Street Journal, has Fox, has New York Post. All these are right wing. They're conservative. And the United States, you have a big movement on the left, the progressives, and the woke movement, and they are very much anti-Wall Street Journal, anti-New York Post, and anti-Wall Street and anti-Fox channel. So that's where this is happening.
What's happening is that people...
And he's pro-Trump, obviously.
But even people on the right are very critical of him. Like when I post about him on Twitter, you've just got them... And the way I see it is that they see him as part of the establishment. There's just that distrust in I'm using the term very loosely, the establishment. And we saw that with... was it the Murdoch that had the radio stations approved by the FCC? And fast-tracked by the FCC. So you essentially have all these different organizations targeting Elon. He's seen as anti-establishment. And then you've got them supporting the Murdochs. So what I see is that line being drawn as of establishment and anti-establishment. So my question to you is, having met people on all sides and being friendly with everyone on all sides, do you see that rise of the populist movement around the world? Does that concern you?
Look, there's populism on the right, populism on the left. We see that it's happening, of course. And many politicians capitalize and leverage on that, obviously. But look, when you have a good politician or good businessman doing his job, you inevitably have people against him. Even Musk had people against him, frankly speaking. Even Musk, some people are against him with all of the good he's doing right now, because he's very much pro-Trump, and he played a role in the election of President Trump. I mean, when I talked to him last time, he was in Pennsylvania. He just came back from campaigning, and he's going back to campaigning for Trump. So clearly, all those people that are anti-Trump are going to be anti-Musk, because the guy is now chose the winning horse, and he won, obviously. And I hope that the winning of Mr. Trump and the support of Mr. Musk and the ideas he has right now that are, as I told, not evolutionary but revolutionary, will be a good positive to the United States.
Your Royal Highness, my last question to you is, what will be your message to Americans as one of, if not the biggest foreign investor in the country? The US is going through massive shifts, massive change, and there's a lot of excitement right now. There was fear a few months ago. Now there's excitement, which is really good to see.
Yes.
There's still fear among those on the left of what a new Trump presidency would mean. What is your message to the US right now, and what is your message to the world with all the wars that we're seeing, all the uncertainty we're seeing in Europe, in Eastern Europe, and in the Middle East?
Yeah, my message to the US people is really, election's over. You have elected president now. Unite behind him. Give him a chance to deliver on all the good things he said, even if you don't agree with some. Cutting deficit, reducing the cumulative debt to the United States, I think whether you're Democrat or Republican or Independent, is difficult to be against. So that's a unifying issue. Clearly, some believe to have an open border and have immigrants come left and right. Clearly, you have to accept the fact that Mr. Trump will not accept that, and he will stop the border and have legal immigrants come. I say U.S. economy is doing good. Clearly, you have issues, but still, U.S. economy is doing good and moving well. So you have a lot of positive things to think of in the United States. You're still a world leader. You're still way ahead of everybody else. So believe in your country, no matter how polarized you are, no matter of how much the divisive was the last elections. So just stay united. America is still great, and will always be great.
And the message to the world about what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in the Middle East as well.
Look, I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman that really is invested all over the globe. Clearly, I have vested interest to have peace all over the world. There's no doubt about that. And I hope that those areas that exploded, like the Ukraine-Russian war, like what's happening in the Middle East, all will subside. And I hope no further explosions happen or wars happen, whether it is in Southeast Asia, like in China and Taiwan, or any other place. definitely we are for peace, and our philanthropy and charity works towards having peaceful solutions and resolutions to any conflict in the world, and we play a role in really stabilizing the international community through all the work we do nationally, regionally, and internationally.
Your Royal Highness, you gave us 2 hours. Absolute pleasure, absolute honor. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.